Congee is not only scrumptious, but it's a recipe that's so much fun to play with. That's because a good rice porridge can take on so many flavors. Meat, vegetable, tofu, you name it. Plus, it's such a nourishing, satisfying meal. Whenever I get sick, I have to make a pot of congee. It's like our chicken noodle soup. Instead of drinking water or tea, this is another way to get fluids back into your system. I love how comforting and versatile congee is, and you will too after you see what I'm making today. A classic congee with ground pork and century egg will take you right back to China, or maybe just back to your childhood. Savory pork and the unmistakable sharpness of a century egg make a delightful contrast to the smooth rice porridge. Brown rice congee with shiitake mushrooms updates a traditional recipe with the slightly nutty flavor and toothy texture of brown rice, plus some oh-so-good-for-you Chinese greens. Healthy was never so comforting. I'll mix things up with Chiu Chow oyster congee. This heavenly shellfish porridge is the perfect dish to warm you up on a cold day, and it's easy enough to make any day of the week. If you've never tried congee, my recipes will make you a fan. And if congee is already one of your favorites, let me add to your repertoire with these diverse and delicious congee creations. When I think of congee with ground pork and century egg. Classic. So you're gonna start with 14 cups of water. I know, it's a lot of water, but trust me, just trust me on this, okay? So we got that going in the pot, and then we're gonna add in half a cup of sweet rice, glutinous rice. Throw that in. And we're also gonna add in half a cup of just regular rice here. Put the lid back on. Bring it to a boil and then turn it down slightly to simmer for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And just stir it every now and then because it's kind of like milk. You gotta stir it so it doesn't scald on the bottom. And while that is cooking up, we're gonna heat up a little bit of oil here. It's about a tablespoon of oil. Now that the oil is heated, we're gonna cook up about half a pound of ground pork. The reason why you need to cook the pork first is because when the congee is ready and you pour all this raw ground pork in, it's gonna be just one massive clump. You don't want that. So that's why we're pre-cooking it, and we're also gonna drain this pork to get rid of some of that grease too. I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of salt. And a little bit of ground white pepper. You can always add a little bit more later, depending on everybody's tastes. Let's turn this stove off because our pork's ready. And while I drain the fat off of the pork, let's talk about one of the most important ingredients in this congee. That's century eggs. Century eggs are also known as preserved egg, 100 or 1,000-year-old egg, or even millennium egg. You preserve the duck eggs, chicken, or quail eggs in some clay, ash, salt, quicklime, and rice hulls from a few weeks to many, many months. The egg whites become translucent brown jelly, and the yolk turns dark green or gray, and it kind of smells like sulfur and ammonia. This method was created to prevent eggs from going bad. You peel and eat them with tofu or in congee. You can also combine them with other fresh eggs to make an omelet or steam with ground pork and tofu. It's very hard to describe the taste of century egg. I find them very fragrant, but some people just think they're stinky. So the rice has been cooking in the water for about 2 hours now, and it's almost ready, so we're gonna prep the century eggs here. And look how pretty this one is with that snowflake pattern. That's what you want to look for. That means you got a good one here. So these are really good quality because it's got that nice snowflake pattern, the pine cone, pine pattern. But the more you can get, the better. It's amazing. It's so pretty to look at. But also the center is going to be a little bit mushy, so I'm going to show you the proper way how to cut this. And you're going to need either some thread or some dental floss works as well. So my mom taught me this when I was young, to make clean slices of any kind of egg. There we go, good piece here. And now you're gonna put one end into your mouth and bite on it, and the other part you're gonna wrap it around the egg and slice. Here we go, I can't talk now. That's full, minty. So that's how you would slice any egg like this. But here's the thing though, if you're feeling kind of a little lazy, which sometimes I get, I just use a knife. It's just gonna be a little messy. So you can just randomly slice this up. And when it goes into your congee, you can break it up with your spoon too, so it doesn't have to look super pretty. I just wanted to show you that trick because my mom would definitely want you to do things the proper way. And we'll finish off the rest of these eggs. So in a century egg, you want to look for an egg that doesn't have a runny, mushy center. So these ones are pretty good. That means they preserved the eggs very well. If you get a runny one, they didn't do a very good job. And then you're left with a very mushy mess. Let's get this into the bowl here. So now we're ready to add the pork to the congee. Ooh, steamy goodness. Toss this in. And since the pork is already cooked, we'll give this a good stir to mix it up. I love this consistency. It's my favorite way of having congee. So it's a little bit more watery. If you don't want it this watery, you can lessen the amount of water. But also, when you have leftovers, the next day it's going to thicken, almost like an oatmeal porridge. So then you can have your choice of eating it as is or adding a little bit more water. So I always tend to like mine watery like this. Stay with my mom, like mother, like daughter. So now I'm ready to serve this. For the finishing final touch, the very fancy preserved duck eggs, the century eggs. Let's toss this all in so everybody gets a good spoonful of it. And now we're gonna just sprinkle on a little bit of sliced up green onion. Oh, it's almost ready. In 3, 2, 1. Ground pork and century egg congee. This is my all-time favorite with a little touch of soy sauce. Woohoo! It'll be yours too. Traditionally, congee is made with white rice, but if you want a healthy spin on this, try this brown rice congee with fresh shiitake mushrooms and Asian greens. And I've got about a teaspoon of grapeseed oil already heating up, where we're gonna add a 1-inch piece of ginger sliced up like this. We're also gonna add 2 cloves of garlic, all nicely sliced up. Give this a little stir. Bring out the flavors. And now I'm gonna add a cup of sliced fresh shiitake mushrooms. We're gonna cook this a little bit until the mushrooms get slightly tender. You'll know the mushrooms are ready when they've turned from this white to a slightly beigey color. All right, mushrooms are slightly tender, so we're gonna add about 2 handfuls of oatmeal. Use your best guesstimate. And then we're gonna add 1 cup of brown rice. And now here comes some vegetable stock. You want 9 cups of vegetable stock. Whoa! Let's give this a little stir. I'm gonna put the lid back on and bring this to a boil. Once it boils, we'll turn it back down to a low simmer, and then it simmers for an hour, so you can just walk away and it'll do its own business. It's been simmering for an hour now. Let's take a look. Wow, perfect consistency. So now we're gonna add just about a cup of carrots. You want them julienned like this, cut into about 1.5-inch matchsticks. Give that a little stir. We're gonna put the lid back on and simmer for another half hour. While this is simmering, let me tell you about some alternate congee garnishes. Congee can be quite bland, so it needs a boost of flavor. By adding preserved mustard greens, it'll give your congee that nice sweet, sour, and slightly salty taste. If you add green onions to your congee, it's a really nice contrast of the green and the white, and also the green onions add a light, refreshing taste. I love adding cilantro to my congee. The chopped cilantro stems add a beautiful contrast to that smooth, silky congee, and also it provides a herbaceous flavor. Wow, look at this consistency. So I like it this thickness, but if you like it a little bit more runny, put in about another cup or so of vegetable stock. So we're ready to add some greens. We're gonna add about 1/2 cup of kale, roughly chopped like this. And we're also gonna add 1/2 cup of bok choy, again, roughly chopped. Mix the beautiful greens in. And this congee isn't seasoned yet, so we're gonna add a little bit of soy sauce. You can add just soy sauce or salt, up to you, or both. A little bit of salt. And a little kick of pepper. So we're just gonna let this simmer until the greens get a little bit tender, about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll be ready to serve. The greens are ready, slightly tender. Let's serve this. There we are. Some final touches, some roasted peanuts for that extra crunch, a little bit of sesame seeds, lightly toasted, and what about some cilantro, classic garnishing touch. There you have it, a beautiful, healthy spin on rice congee using brown rice, fresh shiitake mushrooms, and Asian greens. My sister-in-law insisted that I show you how to make this congee. It's very, very famous. It's Chiu Chow congee with oyster. Amazing. We're gonna start by marinating some ground pork. So you want about 100 grams of minced pork here. We're gonna put in a tablespoon of Chinese rice cooking wine. Then a teaspoon of salt. Whoa. And then a few pinches of ground white pepper. third one for good luck. Give it a good mix. The pork has to marinate about 15 minutes, so we're gonna just wrap it up and put it in the fridge. While the pork is marinating, we're gonna start heating up the pot with 2 cups of chicken broth, then 2 cups of water, and 1 cup of white rice. I'm gonna give this a little stir here. Put this lid back on because it's got to come to a boil, and we're gonna turn down the heat and simmer it for 20 minutes. Our pork's been marinating for 15 minutes now. And the congee has been simmering for about 20 minutes, so it's ready to go. But one last step with the pork, we're gonna lightly cook it with some hot water so that when we put it into the congee, it's not one big massive clump. Give this a little stir. A little bit more hot water. There we go, it's starting to cook a little bit. Add just more until it gets a little cooked, even more cooked. So you'll notice that the pork is not a big massive clump and it's turning a little bit white. That's a good sign. Now it's time to add the pork to the congee. Oh, look at this. This is the perfect consistency. So notice how you see each kernel of rice. This is what you need. This congee is known for this consistency. Almost like the rice is al dente. You want to stir this a little bit while the pork is cooking. It'll take about 2 minutes. The pork is fully cooked now. We're gonna add the baby oysters. You wanna add about 300 grams of oysters. We're gonna let this simmer a little bit so that the oysters really release their flavor into the congee. So I just turned up the heat a little bit so it comes to a simmer again. Oh, oyster congee. Hey, this looks ready. It's come to a slight simmer. Let's turn out the heat. Oysters. We're almost done. Gonna garnish with a little chopped up cilantro. And then my favorite garnish is some fried shallots. A lot of them. Here you go, recommended by my sister-in-law, some Chiu Chow oyster congee. Congee is so amazing because it just warms you up and it's so easy to make too. So ground pork and century egg congee is just a very, very classic congee Like it's just your go-to. I've always grown up eating it and thinking, yep, if I don't have anything in my fridge, well, this is what to make. When you take a big spoonful of the congee, you'll get that nice creamy fullness of the century egg, and then a little bit of different texture from the ground pork mixed in with the mushy rice porridge. Congee is normally used with white rice, but this version, the brown rice congee with shiitake mushrooms, is a much healthier way to make congee. Gives you a little bit more nutrients in there, and then the sweetness and earthiness of the shiitake mushrooms, that adds a lot of flavor. When you take a bite of the congee, so you'll feel a little bit of the graininess from the brown rice and the nutty flavor of that, and then you get that earthiness because the shiitake mushrooms are a little bit more earthy versus oyster mushrooms. So yeah, it's just got a nice balance of that, and then the added Chinese greens gives that refreshing kick. What makes the Chiu Chow oysters congee so special is, one, you're using these amazing oysters and infuses the shellfish flavor into the congee. And another thing too is in Chiu Chow congee, the kernels are more full, so it's not mushy. When you take that spoonful of Chiu Chow oyster congee, you're gonna taste each kernel, and you're gonna get that mouthful of shellfish, those little oysters popping in your mouth. Growing up, we always just had congee on the weekends for brunch, so instead of having, bacon and eggs, it was congee and oily sticks. Because you add so much different ingredients, congee just has a much fuller flavor than rice on its own, and it becomes a meal instead of a side dish or a complement to something.